Hello and welcome to this episode of The Wave. I'm your host, Don Tecson, coming to you from my humble home here in Port Alberni. With me today is Graham Hughes, Executive Director of Literacy Alberni. And this is news to me, the volunteer coordinator of ACCR, Alberni COVID Community Response, ACCR. So when did it start, Graham?
Originally with Literacy Alberni's work, we fall under what is still considered an essential service provider.
Yeah.
Because we deal with the populations for immigrants and refugees. So people who are still applying for citizenship or anything to do with settlement process, we still remain open, including for some services if people require advocacy or translation services or just connections to clarification of what's all in the news. Because it's one of the things that for everyone right now, keeping track of what's going on and what the rules are and what you can and can't do, it's a lot to keep up with, just as someone who speaks the language that the news is coming out in, let alone someone who's getting the news in English, which may be my second or third language. So it's just one of those ones where we stay open for that. And there were other organizations who, in kind of a moment of urgency, all sort of rallied together and said, well, we have a crisis and we need to just address that. So under kind of the leadership of Salvation Army and Bread of Life and Canadian Mental Health Association here in Port Alberni, Literacy Alberni has kind of partnered up as an outpost for donations to come through, as well as for our office to be available to just do some of the odd jobs that need to be done. And I've used the office to continue Literacy Alberni's work, so.
Oh, okay. So ACCR is a sort of like a collaboration between all these different organizations that you just mentioned?
Yes, what we've got is it's the collective, and primarily we're working, like the outreach work is being done through Salvation Army, and they're doing an incredible job of providing usually about 200 meals or hampers a day to the community. And as we go through the waves of need in our community, it's there's been a lot of like the fundraising work that's been required, and the generosity has been incredible to help us be able to ensure that in the immediate and also, you know, as this continues, we have what we need to reach the people in need in our community.
Okay, so who's at the head of the other organizations? Like who else is involved aside from yourself? And you mentioned somebody from the Salvation Army. Was it Mike?
Yes,
or Mark?
Michael Ramsey with the Salvation Army has been kind of the lead on the ground and coordinating the teams that are working out of that space. So between the CMHA office and the Salvation Army on Argyle and the Bread of Life, there's been various kind of outposts where work is being done, food is being prepared, preserved, and delivered. So it's been quite efficient, and I'm very proud actually to be a part of the work that they're doing, because it's impressive. It's you know, in nonprofit work, so often, you know, like there's kind of we're so busy trying to just maintain what we're doing, and you know, the day-to-day, the budget shortfalls in this kind of crisis situation, what everyone has been able to do is just what's needing to be done. And I think that it's inspiring work that that the community as a whole has been a part of.
Yeah, I know community has always been a community, to me, a community that has had a big, big heart. I mean, we've done lots of great things together as a community, and I'm just so blessed to be a part of this community. So what exactly would a volunteer do in your scope of organization?
Well, right now, what we are looking for volunteers to do primarily is to be available. Because at this point, what we're doing is limiting the number of people who are doing work in the various spaces and the number of people who are jumping in, so that the circle of people that are kind of in our part of team that is working at that point also are able to kind of limit their number of people that they're potentially being exposed to the COVID virus through. But as the needs grow, and with the school year kind of progressing with distance learning, there's a lot of people who don't have access to technology. There's a lot of people who don't have access to picking up food. So a lot of the work that's being done is jobs that we never really knew we'd need people for, but it is things like unloading pallets of shipment of food. It is delivering hampers to addresses. It is answering phones, and it is taking care of the various populations in our community who we're reaching right now.
So as far as answering phones is concerned, like, do they have to go to a certain place to answer phones, or they can do it in their homes?
Well, we have like the people who are currently working with that are out of the Salvation Army office. If people phone in saying, this is my need, that you make your call there, and there's a phone number. I can provide that for you afterwards. I will jumble it if I give it to you now. But they are, the Salvation Army has done a great job of reaching out. We have the ability for hamper kind of supports, meals that have been prepared. And, we keep the food as the #1 focus right now, but also there are craft kits that are going out. There's school activities, there's homework help supplies. And as we kind of move forward, we're looking at the options that we have available for providing technology because it's
Well, that sounds pretty busy. I mean, you sound like you're more busy now before the crisis.
There is always kind of a comment that I had a little bit of a manic energy about me. Who knew that would be something that I'd be proud to put on a resume afterwards? Is it like I can be efficient when my anxiety runs my life? It's good. It's good.
Well, yeah, it's good that you're able to participate. I mean, given your limited resources and your, what's available to you. So, for example, I'm a volunteer. I like to volunteer. Where do I go? Who do I talk to?
Me. Give me a shout. And
yeah, you're the volunteer coordinator, right?
Yes, and what we're doing at this point is it still has a screening kind of process. And now that we're going into the next stages of it, it's going to become a bit more of a social component as well, so that there'll be a specific Facebook group for the volunteers for us to stay in touch with each other. Because one of the things that we're asking for if you are volunteering is that's your outing. Like if you, it has to be, like we don't want to be having people, unfortunately, we have to be very careful at this point. So people who are still working or have a large circle of contact, if they're, if you're working in a store or something like that, we respect, and there are jobs that we can have you doing from home, but we want the volunteers who are in these spaces to be people who are just going to that space, so that when we are assembling our teams, that we know that there is kind of a quarantine process that's going on to the best of our ability, that we know that we're not contaminating the volunteers or passing along the virus to the people we're reaching.
Okay, so in the case like I have a donation, where do I bring it?
Right now, I believe through the Salvation Army, and they have a post up on the days that they're accepting donations. And we are limiting at this point the days of those contact. But again, Salvation Army is the one that I would say talk to about that work. They, if you're dropping off supplies or those types of hampers, I do believe that we have the ability to pick those up as well. But right now, the big thing that we're just kind of preparing for what's next. It's that right now we have efficiency and everything is going very well, but we don't know how long this is going to last. And so with our work with the volunteer teams and with Literacy Alberni's kind of work, we're just kind of looking at almost like an 18-month plan. Not that we'll be living
18 months, that far off, eh?
Literacy Alberni and a lot of the other nonprofits in our community, we are going to be losing our fundraising seasons for this. And it's one of those ones where, first and foremost, if anyone can donate, the most urgent need at this time, I think most people recognize, is food. We have to keep people healthy, safe, and alive. So sanitation supplies, toiletries, and essential products and food are going to be the #1 thing that our community needs. But going forward, without our fundraising seasons, it's going to be felt for a while. Because we do rely on our community, and they are what keeps us going, through the financial donations and the in-kind contributions. We all required to fundraise base. I don't think there's a single nonprofit that doesn't have to have a large fundraiser in our community.
Oh, definitely.
And the community has always been very supportive of the nonprofits. And I know that many of us will be okay, but there is that kind of concern going forward of what happens without the ability to do those events, and it's for Literacy Alberni, it's kind of our Raise a Reader season, but the other nonprofits as well, it's going to be a period where we are just going to do what's already being done, come together, support one another, and make sure that our people that rely on us are taken care of, and that we are able to take care of our staff and kind of our financials until things stabilize once again.
So there's been a rumor already about, I don't know if you heard about, I heard it on the news that it is antibody or some kind of testing drug that's not available in Canada, although it was developed in Canada, and they're trying to lobby for it to become available here. Have you heard of such a thing?
At this point, for my own mental health, I'm limiting how much news I'm taking in.
Okay, yeah, that's understandable.
It's I do watch Bonnie Henry on the BC News when she does her announcements, But there is, I think the most important thing at this point to remind people of is that there will be a future after this. And
Yeah,
when it's
definitely.
available, we'll find that, but we don't know when. It's going to be an interesting time. And I think that that's one of the portions of this situation that will really be interesting is how long. It's going to be
Yeah,
the
how
how
long
long.
and how long do we have to sustain all these new things? And I guess as an end result, there are things that have to be changed in the long term anyways. I mean, people will be doing major changes in industry, in workplaces and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, it's just strange to think about. Even when you watch TV now, I don't know if you've noticed, but whenever I watch like a movie or a TV show, and I'm big into reality TV, so whenever I see people like high-fiving, I'm like, no, you can't do that. Like you have that kind of gut reaction, and I'm curious how long that's going to take for us to shed, or if we do get to shed that. And I
Yeah.
hope we do. I do hope that soon we will have kind of a countdown, because for me that's the difficult part of it. Is there's always difficult periods, like, okay, well, this is our, we have to wait until 3 months from now to launch this project, or until we can start this. But now it's when can we even see our clients in person again? And that's
That's
the
true.
difficult part of it.
So moving forward, there definitely is going to be changes and all that stuff, right? And what the any bold predictions of what's going to happen? For example, the lockdown is lifted or this isolation is finally over. What do you foresee will be things that will change?
Well, I don't want to predict doomsday kind of things at all. I do think that it is going to be very difficult on the local economy. And so I think that the biggest thing we can do at this point is, when possible, support the local businesses. I think that
Yeah.
our local economy and a lot of our business people are doing things to stay open. And I think that one of the ways that, if you don't necessarily want to be ordering food from them, if it's a restaurant, or if it's, if you need to buy supplies from somewhere, check and see if you can get it from them first. But if you can't, plan a future date. Like, if you like,
Hmm.
there's lots of wonderful restaurants here. Maybe make a commitment that, in the future this is where we're going to go as our first meal out once we're back, or this is what we're going to do as an event, and going to go see a movie and take in dinner somewhere.
Hmm.
I think that that's the one that there is a lot of concern right now. And I hope the provincial government, and I believe that they will, do more to support the work being done by the small business people in communities like ours that are, we don't always have the easiest economy for a small business to survive in. So I
Yeah, it's
think
true.
right now that's one of the ones where I think small business is going to be something that, if we don't support right now, we might have less options afterwards.
That's
And
true.
what the climate looks like with that. I think that it's going to change.
But your
All,
category isn't small business. Your category is nonprofit. Has there been any development or announcement, or like as far as financial aid to nonprofits are concerned?
well, Literacy
I have.
Alberni is in a bit of a unique situation, because we do have, we're a registered charity, but we also are a nonprofit business, because we do have some for fee services, and we do qualify for some of the options available. But the question being is a lot of them at this point remain loans. And like the
Oh.
small businesses, it's, do we want to, or do we want to even ask our board members at this point to consider taking on this risk of debt, when we don't even know how long we're going
Hmm.
to be able, until we
Yeah,
can
that's
actually
true.
start generating the funds to cover that. And so I think, like with Literacy Alberni's work, I am inspired not only by like our community, but with our team here. When we had, it was March 17th that we had our first kind of, everybody was out. We were expecting kind of a strange work week. I don't think anyone saw it being that strange. And now, almost a month later, I have a full staff who is like, well, we miss our people. How do we reach them? And what do we do? So I think that the way that we deliver services may be more inclusive after this. I think that one of the things that's interesting is that, as a disabled person, there's a lot of people who are in the disabled community who don't have the option of always working in an office,
Hmm.
or showing up every day to an office, but they can sometimes. And now we're learning these ways of conducting business and getting business done from home or from
Hmm.
isolation. So I think there will be positive things that change the way we do work, but I
Yeah,
also am
like, are
curious.
you planning on doing some online stuff with the way you work?
Well, I mean,
Like meetings online and planning programs online and even tutoring or teaching online?
we are actually exploring bringing some of our classes and sessions, like our tutoring services and our volunteer tutoring services, through this type Zoom setting.
Mhm.
But again, the question is for like elderly populations who aren't, don't necessarily have what we would refer to as a high level of technology literacy or technological literacy.
Yeah.
It is a barrier, but we do want to do as much as we can to be reaching those people. And it seems like when the restrictions are slowly being lifted, what it'll end up being is smaller groups, smaller sessions, but we will get through it. I know that Literacy
Oh,
Alberta,
yeah.
the team that we have with the volunteers who are asking how can we help, with the learners who are really the reason that we have the wonderful kind of environment that we get to work in. I know that we will see them all again. It's just kind of when is the big question.
Yeah. It's all a waiting game right now, and we have to just make the most of what we can do at the present time. I mean, these are trying times. These are like, this has never happened in the history of the world. This is totally new.
Well, and I think that that's one of the ones that, because with my work right now, one of the things that we're doing is kind of trying to record that through this pandemic postcard project, where it's right now, this is the first time that there's been a plague that has been kind of threatening, a lot of people and impacting the way we live and operate and do things. And it's the first time that it's happened that we can connect in ways like this. But it's also the first time that all of the records of that are going to be primarily digital. So the pandemic postcard
Yeah.
project we're starting up here is just to collect things like screen captures of conversations on phones, or thoughts that you've had while in
Mhm.
isolation, recipes you've tried, or pages from your journal. It's just, we want to collect kind of a legacy of this experience for our community and abroad, that we can, at the end of this, give to the museum here and have that record for future generations, and also for current ones to come by and see, like, that's kind of cool,
Yeah, we went through that, right? Our children will be like, oh, we went through that.
Yeah.
We have
Well,
the history of our tsunami. We have our own museum for the tsunami. I guess we'll have our own museum for this pandemic. So as
yeah,
far as,
and
yeah,
I'm
please.
excited to kind of, I think that that's the one thing that I'm really hoping people focus on right now is, it is difficult. It is very difficult right now to find always the ability to be positive or optimistic or even have like a smile. But there are so many acts of kindness happening. And we kind of came from a culture where people, it was almost like a negative thing to talk about the generosity that you were showing, and that you don't want to be boasting about who you donated to or what you were a part of.
Mhm.
But when people look back on this, like when people come back and say, how did Port Alberni survive? Or how did my family get through? Or what did they do in that situation? I hope that we can have this collection of things for families to look back on and say, I'm pretty proud of that person for dropping groceries off for their neighborhood. Or
Yeah.
I'm happy that
It's
they
just
were.
little acts of random kindness that, like, mean a lot. Like, I had a friend who dropped by some turkey dinner because he saw my post that I didn't have turkey for Easter because I won't cook a turkey. I'm just by myself, right? And I offered him some deviled eggs that I got into making, and he said he'll drop by and get some deviled eggs, and he dropped by with a whole platter of like a turkey dinner with even with a parfait as a dessert.
Oh,
And I felt so bad because I forgot about the deviled eggs. So I promise I will make the deviled eggs and bring it to you
oh.
sometime
Well,
today or tomorrow.
and I think that that's kind of the thing that's really neat about this. And it's also the kind of return of phone calls. It's the just, I don't
Yeah,
care
stay
how I
in
look.
touch.
Yeah, because I mean, before, if someone had FaceTimed me before, I would say, oh no, we are not doing that. Like,
No, you have no time.
there is no way that
You're
this,
too
like,
busy to do other things, right?
well, and usually I'm a little bit self-conscious about how I show up. I don't mind showing up the way I am, but seeing, that, but now that there's kind of what feels like the apocalypse going on, I feel like my work outfits are great. It's good.
You look great always.
Oh,
So
well,
on a personal level, how have you been coping? You haven't been have you been in isolation, staying at home? You have been going to the office, right?
Yeah, and that's my outpost. So I mean, aside from that, it's been strange because I'm not the most like I'm not a person that likes crowds or big venues of things, but I am busy and I do love
Yeah.
just going places and seeing things or being a part of it and talking with strangers and like that type of thing. So for me, it's I've been lucky because I've been able to continue working, and I think that as and being a part of all this work has given me a lot of hope and distraction. And I think that distraction and just feeling, at the end of the day that there is something that,
Yeah, you
even if it,
contributed something, you did something. No matter how small, you did something that
yeah,
helps.
and I got through the day. And that's the thing for me.
Yeah.
I think that no matter what someone is doing in a day, if it is just sitting at home and being comfortable and playing video games or staring at Facebook, if you get through the day, you get to be proud of yourself right now. And I
Yeah,
think
that's
that's, and if you have like the
it's
desire,
not an easy task to get into the day. I had a hard time breaking out of a sleep pattern I've fallen into. Like I go to sleep at 6 in the morning and I wake up at 1 in the afternoon. That's why I schedule all these interviews at 2 o'clock. So I'm sure. But fortunately today I was able to break out of that sleeping habit. And so I'm back in action. I'm ready to go by 8 o'clock or something. So if ever this pandemic would end and I have to go back to work, I'll be ready to go back to work. But
well,
you
and
know,
I think that that's kind of the thing that's interesting too, is that we're all kind of learning that self-care, which we've always sort of talked about, it's been a big buzzword the last, especially like the last 5 years. Everyone's talking about like self-care and what does that look like? And everyone now is kind of out of necessity, figuring out the ways that they are caring for themselves and their mental health. Because I think that that's the number one priority right now, aside from food, is how are you doing mentally? Because it
yeah,
is.
it's I'll admit that sometimes I feel like I'm going insane, but I find some things to occupy my mind.
Yeah. What are you doing? What are your things that you're keeping busy with?
Well, like I've set up a series of interviews, so the wave isn't going on as regularly scheduled as on Shaw because of all this pandemic thing. So I come up with a series. Now we can go on the air every day actually. So I have you, I have Cindy Solda tomorrow, I have Pastor Brenda on Friday. Then on the week after, we're gonna launch a series called The Wave Rainbow Editions, where I'm gonna be interviewing people from the LGBTQ community, and we'll be discussing issues of how they're coping in the community of the LGBTQ community, how they're coping with this pandemic, and stories of their heartwarming stories of their coming out, and couples sharing their stories and stuff like that. So we have the LGBTQ. It's going to be called the Wave Rainbow Edition.
I'm excited for
And
that. I think that that's one of
yeah,
the ones too that's been on my mind quite a lot is, like like everything from, people see pride as kind of like a party, but really what that is solidarity in
mm-hmm.
community. And so like for various groups, whether it be LGBT or anyone else, that in-person safety that you had with people who had a similar story or experience,
Mm-hmm.
it is impacting that, and it goes right back to the mental health thing. So I love that you're featuring that, because I think it's really important to know how people can connect with their people and
Mm-hmm.
their communities, or people especially if they're not out, and like if they're, it's even more difficult because there's no visibility at this point of the communities.
Yes, that's
So
true.
keep that going. It's good.
Yeah, I'm working with some other of my friends. Like, I don't know if you've ever heard of Robbie Van. He's a transgendered woman, and he was at my birthday party, and that was my last big event before this whole pandemic thing. I had a birthday party on March 8th at Charles Landing, and Robbie was a guest, and I allowed him to roast me or something like that. I still have to share the video of that roast. It was quite an experience. But I mean, Robbie said something that struck me. He said he met me at the Pride picnic, the Pride event, and he said he came out at the same age that I was celebrating my birthday. I was 57 when I celebrated my birthday this year, and Robbie came out at 57, and he was telling me that without knowing it, I was sort of like encouraging a safe environment for people, for the LGBTQ community to, because I have some people who have reached out to me and asked me how I'm so confident and I'm so brave to come out like this. Because some people on the other hand said, if I had been here in Port Alberni 10 years ago, I would have been dead. I would
Hmm.
have been killed already by the way I carry on with, with flamboyant as I am, right? So, but I don't know, I feel safe. I never felt threatened here in Port Alberni. And another feature we're planning to come out on the Wave is, as you mentioned a while ago, to support local businesses. I'll be setting up interviews, Zoom interviews with my other co-hosts with local business owners, and so they can talk about how this pandemic has affected them and what they're doing to, you know, make ends meet and what are the resources available to them. Because I got a lot of friends with their own little businesses, and they've really been hit hard. Like Cheryl of the Bluefish Gallery, I love her. And you know, this thing has really affected the small businesses. So we're going to be doing a feature on those small businesses as well.
That's wonderful. And I think that, you know, like that there is through the chamber, I think that you can right now too, if people are looking for ways to kind of support small businesses. I don't know if it's for all small businesses in Port Alberni, it's probably just for chamber members right now, but that's it's if people want to find resources and how they can support local businesses, there's that available. And there's always just Facebook,
cool.
And there's phone calls people can make to find out, like, how do I get this from you rather than from Amazon or Walmart or somewhere else?
That's a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
So well, and I think go to our Facebook pages you can go to for that, or the Chamber of Commerce Facebook page.
How I have like 5% left on my battery on here, so I will get that list of of businesses that are still open for you, and maybe we can post those links below.
Okay, yeah.
Video, and I'll put the information for contact as well in there.
And the contact numbers. Well, thank you, Graham. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it, and thank you for always being available for us to do the show. So any last words for our viewers? Like some kind of encouragement?
Just send us a postcard, and it can be through the email. It's just postcardproject@literacyalberni.ca. So send us your thoughts, your poems, your pictures, your screen captures. Give us some piece of your legacy so that we can preserve that and make sure it's there forever.
Okay. Well,
and
again,
thank you to you too, Don, because I think that, like, you know, the vibe of what your show is about, the wonderful Alberni Valley experience, we really need to focus on that right now, because we we will still have a wonderful Alberni Valley experience through this crisis. It will be all part of the experience. Well, and I think that, you know, I just think the last thought that I'll share is that, like, Port Alberni should be very proud of how we're responding to this. You know, sometimes you'll go on Facebook now and you'll see negativity or people complaining about something. But I've been in contact. There's always something to complain about. Absolutely. But I've been talking with people even in Comox, and what we've done here isn't being done there. And that's not a point of shame. It's just that our kind of strange way that we exist in the valley, which normally, you know, it doesn't fly. Oh, now I'm getting the call. Sorry, but we get proud right now. So I will talk with you soon, Don. Thank you for this. Okay, thanks for being on the show. Take care. Okay, bye. Hello? How are you? I will stop the recording. Oh, do you want to talk to Don? Paul is on the phone. That was who called. Well, Paul's scheduled for my interview on Monday. But really? As a business owner and as Alberni Pride Society as well. So I already reached out to Paul and he's scheduled. So just remind Paul, please shave and comb your hair. I don't expect you to get a haircut, but at least shave or trim your beard or something. He looked hot though. All right. Well, I'm going to end this. I'm going to take the call from Paul. Talk to you soon. Okay. I'm going to stop the recording. Okay. Are you there?